Good evening. I'd like to call to order tonight's meeting of the ISD 191 Burnsville-Egan Savage School Board. The date is February 20th, 2020, and the time is 6:30. I want to thank everyone for joining us this evening. We also know that many folks are paying attention to our awesome girls hockey team who are playing in the first round of state championships tonight. And I just want to take this opportunity to congratulate them and wish them luck on behalf of the school board. Director Miller, would you please lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We will start by approving the agenda tonight. I will take a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Director Schatz. Second?
Second.
Oh, seconded by Director Chester. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of approving the agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay, and the motion carries. We will start the information portion of our meeting tonight by inviting Amina Oftedal, Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, to the speakers table. We will be receiving a report about the FY21 Achievement and Integration Plan. Welcome, Amina.
Thank you very much, Chair Ault, board members, Superintendent Battle. The Achievement Integration Plan is a three-year plan that we put together, and it has long-term goals addressing our instructional disparities and our access to programming for all of our students. So tonight, I hope to provide you with an overview of our Achievement Integration Plan for the next 3 years, 2020 to 23, and provide a summary of our activities and strategies that are involved in that plan. And then later on the agenda for new business, request approval of the 2021 budget. The purpose of Achievement Integration has like 4 bullets. We want to make sure that we're pursuing our integration for both our racially diverse and economically diverse students. We are looking as the #1 priority to increase student achievement, not just for our diverse students, but for all students. We want to make sure that we are creating equitable education opportunities. And finally, we really want to work to use this plan to really reduce our academic disparities. And one of the things that when we think about the definition of equitable access, it is that we want to eliminate the probability of students not achieving based simply on who they are. If we can erase that, that will make us a much stronger organization. We do create the plan every 3 years. This plan, as I said before, is for fiscal year 2020 through fiscal year 23. And the alignment of the goals and the reporting are found in the World's Best Workforce Report. And so as of the last couple of years, we do those as a joint report, and the goals should overlap and be integrated. There are 3 requirements for goals this year for this round of plans. It is the achievement disparity, so we must have at least 1 goal that addresses that. We must have at least 1 goal that addresses integration of our students, and that could be in representation and or access. And finally, the 3rd goal is access to effective and diverse teachers, and how do we provide that opportunity for all students. The revenue for the Achievement Integration Plan comes as a mix of state aid and levy. We get the significant portion, 70%, from the state, and then the 30% is levied. There is a very specific way that the budget is supposed to be distributed. 80% of the budget must be spent on services that directly impact students. Only 20% and nothing more could be spent on professional development activities, and no more than 10% can be spent on admin costs. And I'll show you those figures for our proposed budget. So when we think about the goals, our first goal is to increase our four-year graduation rate from 2019's 78.5% to 90%, recognizing that the 90% is our 2023 goal, so 3 years along the way. And the way the plan is written, it does have benchmark goals for each year. This is our achievement disparity goal, because we have a significant disparity with our academic, or our graduation, four-year graduation rates between our students of color and our white students. The world's best workforce a goal is all students graduate and close all racial and economic achievement gaps. The kinds of strategies that we're going to apply for this is really providing targeted, cultural responsive support for students. This will take place in the form of cultural liaisons. It will also represent part of the time for social workers in every single building. It will include the Fire Parent Academy, so that we have that available to families, both Spanish-speaking families, Somali-speaking families, and English-speaking families, so that the indicator for that is really how many more parents can we include and grow that over and over the next 3 years. We will be using the Avid program as a support. We begin the Avid program in 6th grade for our students, knowing that if we can continually give students who are traditionally underrepresented opportunities to learn those college ready skills, and goal setting could be even filling out college applications, as well as working on critical reading and math and learning to work in study groups. All of those things can support students being successful in advanced coursework, and so that will lead them toward better graduation rates. We also will be applying to continue our equity training and work with our staff, and knowing that that will help create access to teachers who are using culturally proficient strategies and instructional methods in their classroom. The second goal is to increase the percentage of incoming racially and economically diverse students demonstrating kindergarten readiness. This aligns with our world's best workforce goal, all students ready for kindergarten, and the goal to close racial and economic achievement gaps. With the redesign of placing a section of pre-K in every elementary building and integrating them into the pre-K 3 system, we believe that we can continue to do some strong alignment in curriculum and instruction for those students, to see an increase of students entering kindergarten, more kindergarten ready. And I believe we talked about this on previous times, but to know that the measurement that we're going to be using is in pre-reading skills. This is not the only measure for kindergarten readiness, but it is the one measure that we'll be looking at in terms of our accountability. We will be working on recruitment among our diverse families within the school district, and trying to get the voluntary pre-K seats all full, and really looking at using our staff, our social workers, our cultural liaisons, and our teaching staff in order to build really strong school-home partnerships, knowing that our parents are the key educators for our pre-K students. And really looking at offering the supports for students and for families to transition, many times first time, into the school system at kindergarten. And we'll be working with the pre-K program and the early childhood program over the next couple of years, to work on our pre-K 3 alignment system. So the pre-K 3 system is a piece that Cindy Check and her staff have been working on as well. Goal number 3 is to decrease the disparity in representation for the enrollment in advanced classes. Right now, when we look at the enrollment disparities, we have a 24% gap between students of color in advanced coursework and our white students. When we talk about advanced coursework, we're talking about courses that can potentially earn an industry certificate or will earn college credit. And this is a tremendous gap, and we know that by using our Avid program to support students, by supporting our advanced learners all the way down into elementary school to prepare them, as well as really creating connections and supports for families that, through our social workers and our cultural liaisons, and building those strong family partnerships through the FIRE program and through other types of family engagement, especially at the high school level, of what courses people can take, and really making sure that we're directing students and examining our practices to remove barriers for access to those courses. And our final goal is the percent of students who have access to teachers or classrooms that demonstrate culturally responsive pedagogy. Through our kind of equity walkthroughs, we were able to identify 46% of classrooms that were meeting all the targets for cultural proficiency, and we'd like to increase that over the next 3 years to a minimum of 75% of the classrooms hitting all of the criteria for culturally proficient pedagogy. We will continue to work on our social emotional supports and our SEL learning for all of our staffs to be able to deliver that to our classrooms. And also looking at academic support for students, both our advanced learners and students who are struggling to meet benchmarks. And increase the capacity of teachers through professional development and training. We know we have invested a huge amount of training into the CPSS system, and in this district we have approximately 9 trainers and folks who have been through the full training with the Lindsays and Dr. Lindsay and Dr. Lindsay. And we will take advantage of those to begin to grow building level equity teams in each building to carry on the equity and CPSS training at the building level as well. The budget projection from MDE is $2,076,382. And thinking about how that can be divided, we do have the 80% for direct student services. We do have about 10% for professional development and about almost 9% for indirect cost of supervision. That is what I have for the Achievement and Integration Plan. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Board members, questions? Director Schatz.
Thanks for that. That's I love getting those kind of reports where we really see, like, we have great stretch goals and some solid plan behind that. I have a question about the rigorous coursework piece of the disparity in the students of color and white students that are enrolled in those. What do the students say why they aren't enrolling those classes?
There's a couple of things. One, we do have some gatekeeping practices, and they are not necessarily culturally responsive. We are looking at enrollment into some of those courses being based on a single test score and some other kinds of practices that need to be revised. We also need to look at in some cases, students of color have shared that they see those courses as not available to them or too hard for them, or somewhere along the line we have created messaging that if you are a certain type of student, this is not the course for you. And we need to interrupt that narrative and start providing opportunities to scaffold for teachers. We also need to look at, because students have said that they are hesitant to take the courses because they are concerned about the level of support that they would receive in those courses when they begin to struggle. And so, again, looking at our practices to support advanced learners. Our advanced learners need to struggle as well, but we need to make sure that we are providing support for them in that. Also, we do have college admission requirements for some of the courses, and so we need to make sure that we're providing those students who are unable at this time to meet those college requirements or believe that they cannot meet those requirements and therefore choose not to pursue that path. And so we need to make it more welcoming. We need to share a lot more information with parents so that they understand that those courses are available. And we need to make sure that we're offering courses that truly differentiate and don't necessarily mean that they get more homework or more work to do, but work that really asks them to stretch their critical thinking and make connections and learn in a more complex way.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? No? I shared with you before that I really appreciate the goal 3 around the rigor and the access to the rigor, because I think it's definitely, it shows in our data that it's an area of opportunity for us, and making that more of a systematic focus across the system and at all grade levels, I think is really going to make a difference for our students. So thank you very much for the report. This has been really informative.
Thank you.
Next, we are staying with you, and we're receiving a report about the Indian Education Program Plan.
Someone else knows where it is.
Take your time, don't worry about it.
I just wanted to share with you that related to our Indian Education Program, one of the key components of our Indian Education Program is the engagement of our American Indian Parent Advisory Group. And I want you to know that this is a group of folks who meet regularly. They meet once a month, and they share some traditional activities together as a group, and they are welcoming of anyone who wishes to join them. But they are also a really fantastic partner in terms of being a critical friend. They ask difficult questions. They ask questions about equity. They share with great candor experiences that they've had, what hopes and dreams they have for their children. And I find working with this particular group just so rewarding. I am sorry that none of them were able to make it this evening, but I just wanted to share just what a fantastic group that they really are, and how they really think about advocating for their children, both with a historical perspective and a future-looking perspective. So tonight, going to share the Indian Education Program Plan, give you an overview of that, and then I'm going to share you just a couple examples of what the plan and the funding, how they support American Indian students in our district, and ask you later in the new business to approve the American Indian Family Committee's concurrence findings. The American Indian Education Program Plan is really based around the same goals as the world's best workforce. And so the committee looks at data of how students are performing in all of these different areas, and they select the areas that they want to prioritize with the funding that they do receive. There was a real strong consensus about the All Children Ready for School. They really wanted to take a close look at how many American Indian students were accessing the early childhood and pre-K. They know that it is an opportunity to build some strong relationships with our parents and to offer parents support in early learning. So two of the strategies that they're working on is the partnership with active recruiting at community events with the early childhoods, and also using some of our resources to reach out using our census data to families that have identified as American Indian, and do some invitations and tours and other things that might be helpful for them. And really working with our early childhood staff in engaging in professional development, sharing some cultural pieces that they should be aware of as they're working with American Indian families, and thinking about strengths that American Indian students would bring and how to really leverage those for the students. The other area that they're looking at is the world's best workforce area 4, which is all students attain college and career readiness. And so this was a very strong goal as we looked at graduation data, as we looked at dropout data, and as we looked at enrollment and success for our students, American Indian students in advanced coursework. And they really wanted to take a look at how do we increase the number of middle school students attending targeted college experiences. With the funds, they do have the opportunity to support middle school students to attend college school visits, the college Native American College Fair, and interact with students from other districts, and look at what those post-secondary options are that really are focused on the supporting the cultural and historical strengths of American Indian students. It also is a way to continue to connect them to scholarship opportunities that are available to students in the American Indian community. The other part of the goal is to increase proficiency on the Minnesota Comprehensive Assessments in both reading and math for American Indian students. We have a small number of those students, and we are seeing great disparities. We may only have 16 students in the middle school, in one of our middle schools, but we're only seeing, 10% of those students, which is only a couple of students who are meeting proficiency in the MCAs. And so they're looking at having to provide additional opportunities for academic support for our Native American students as well. Could look like a tutor perhaps, or even additional support in heritage or cultural activities. One of the pieces that we host here in this very area is the drum and dance classes. This is a partnership with our neighboring districts in the South Metro. There are about 7 districts that join us, and they come, they share food, they share a nice community, and talk about some heritage pieces, but then they do get to participate with professional drum and dance instructors and develop those skills as well. And in these pictures, you can see some of them are looking at some instruction on traditional beading as they are making the dresses, the jingle dresses, and other types of costumes for their powwow dancing. You see an elder in the middle picture who is instructing the students and sharing some, it's actually a storytelling piece for all of and then you can see the number of children that are there. It's really a really great time. And then the third picture is one of the drum groups coming in and demonstrating, and then sharing with children the opportunity for them to learn to drum as well. And they meet every week here. We also participate in collaboratively with the South of the River Powwow. The Powwow is funded by donations as well as some support from the Indian Ed budget. This year it will be at Burnsville High School. Students are invited to come. They start preparing through drum and dance even now for that May event. And so it's going to be held this year on May 2nd here at Burnsville High School. So I would invite all of you to come. The grand entrance will be at 1 o'clock. The American Indian Parent Advisory Committee has reviewed the Indian Education Program Plan, and I will say not reviewed it, but wrote it, and which is their way of really making sure that their voices are being heard in what we are doing with the limited funds that we have, and also challenging us in our other areas about how we are supporting students in the American Indian community. Tonight, you will be asked to examine the concurrent status. The American Indian Committee voted unanimously to support concurrence with their concurrence with the American Indian Education Program Plan. So. Any questions?
Questions, comments? No. I'm disappointed that none of our Native First Nation families could join us tonight, but it's reassuring to know that even though they can't be with us tonight, that with concurrence there comes engagement and critique, and that hasn't always been the case. And so to hear that as part of your report is really, really good to hear. So yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
And last, we're full of reports tonight. Receiving a report about K-8 Pathways schools and the middle school redesign.
So I'm really super excited to come before you again to share the next steps in our pathway schools. As we have been looking at the elementary pathways, and I've shared with you before, we are putting together a lot of structures into place and pulling in expertise from all of our staff to really address the feedback and the information we've received from families and students. We continue to hold Pathways information meetings at schools for PTO sessions and other kinds of family meetings. In fact, I believe there is one happening right now at Hidden Valley. So it really is a great opportunity to even talk with parents one-on-one, answer those questions. And when we finish the meetings, we'll be able to take most of those questions and the feedback that they've provided and put together responses to all of those questions and be able to post that on the website so folks can begin to look at those if they weren't able to attend any of the sessions. So today, really the outcomes I want to share is to look at the components and the timeline for our elementary pathway school, but also to provide an overview and a timeline for the Pathways Middle School. And that's tied up in the middle school redesign, but not to be lost with the idea that part of the redesign is to increase that alignment and create that pathway school for our students in grades 6 through 8. And then to submit a recommendation that the board establish pathway schools at our elementary and middle schools. Again, why would we look at pathway schools? It is an issue about equity and access for all students at all sites. It is about making sure that we are creating a system of rigor and high expectations for all students, and that alignment from our beginning smallest learners all the way through graduation and post-secondary. The elementary alignment really does look at the 4 pathways and have the age-appropriate instruction and curriculum involved with each of those as they are aligned to the high school pathways themselves. This is the timeline, and you've seen this before, really looking at next year being able to roll out some highly trained advanced learning specialists at each site, looking at the band and orchestra round-robin experiences for grade 5, looking at the design and coding units aligned to the high school and to the middle school Project Lead the Way as a bridge into the high school, ongoing support for organization and management of the maker spaces, and we will begin our math curriculum pilot. Year 2 and year 3, again, those could be adjusted, but that is the kind of the direction that we want to go, bringing in theater performing arts in year 2 and begin the training for our entrepreneurship and project-based learning. Looking at year 3 being an implementation of math and project-based learning, considerations of Avid, and also looking at the next generation science standards and thinking about our science instruction for our elementary. When we think about our middle school, we really wanted to take the opportunity of the condensing of the school populations into 2 sites to be able to implement some of the research-based strategies and models that we know are there for effective middle schools. And the models that we're using are coming from the Association of Middle Level Education and the National Middle School Association. We want to make sure that we are providing those supports for students, those social emotional supports, because if you have spent any extended amount of time in a building with 800 12 to 14-year-olds, you know that they have some unique needs and they have some unique ways that they operate, and it is important that we do not treat them like elementary children, and they're not quite young adults yet. And so it's that transition period in which there is a huge amount of variety that we want to make sure that we're addressing in our systems and in our responses. We also looked at how do we build that explicit bridge to the high school pathways. At this part, we're no longer just kind of awareness and emerging. This is where students are beginning to do some exploratory pieces. Where are the choices that students are beginning to take that interest and be able to make some beginning choices about what they may want to do? And finally, to really look at how do we support our advanced learners and how do we encourage students to be more involved in the advanced learning opportunities that we have and eliminate those barriers. So when we think about the middle school philosophy and design, we're using the model that comes from a research-based text from the American Middle Level Educational Association. This we believe, and that is going to be our seminal text. This we believe, oh my, the numbering It's not quite right. There should be 16 items there. The 16 items in this, we believe, really are divided into these three categories. And what we'll be looking at is curriculum, instruction, and assessment. How do we instruct students to ensure we have high expectations and that the learning is very active and purposeful? Students at this level really do need to physically move as well as be actively engaged and asked to be engaged. And also to look at how are we assessing students and not assessing them all in the same way, that they have a variety of options to show how they have learned. The leadership and organization, that's about the professional development, that's about our principals, our building leadership teams, our department leaders, all of them having that shared vision of how do we build this cocoon around our middle school students and support them and watch them fly away as young adults into the high school. Then also looking at the culture and community. This is about school climate. This is about making sure that students feel safe in their classrooms to share their opinions, to use their voice, as well as recognizing that the adults are their partners and the adults can serve as advocates for them. This is really thinking about how do we provide guidance and support as they make those choices and really focusing on what is that well-being for that whole child as they are developing. So I'm going to take you through each of the pieces. When we think about the schedule for the middle school, we're thinking about the opportunity to use a teaming model in which one group of teachers share the same group of students throughout the day. And so they form their own little mini house or their mini school. And so that group of teachers is looking at that same group all year long and really working together to see what supports they can provide to students. Where are students' strengths and weaknesses? Student may be performing really, really well in math class and not as well in their language arts class. And these two teachers then can have that conversation about how they might be able to support each other to make sure that that student gets exactly what he or she needs. We really want to look at the block schedule, and the block schedule is intended to reduce the number of transitions. When you have 800 middle school students moving in the hallway, by the time they're at their 8th or 9th transition, there tends to be a lot of fatigue, which results in a lot of energy and emotion being expended for students. And what we want to do is we really want to focus that energy and engagement into classroom learning. And so by reducing the number of transitions, we are able to really make sure that students are getting the active kind of movement that they need, but at the same time, not in such short bursts so that they can really focus. The block schedule is intended to be 90 minutes and really looking at other ways that we can use those blocks in flexible ways. Our intervention and enrichment will be directly linked to the core. So even though we're using a block schedule, students will still receive the same minutes of instruction that they are now in each of the content areas. So science, for example, may be done in alternating days. So one day they'll have 90 minutes of science, the next day they'll have 90 minutes of social studies. So those will flip daily, A, B day. However, language arts and math, they will meet in a 90-minute block every day. Half of that block will be core instruction. The other half of that block will replace a separate blaze time, so that it is at that time, and I'll talk a little bit more, that students will receive their intervention. So and then it's tied directly to, linked to the core instruction itself instead of as a separate piece. They will still have time for their 2 electives, and so what we are trying to do here is ensure that the students have the same minutes, but we have reorganized them in a different way to kind of quell the energy. We also have really looking at the exploratory and electives. This is what a lot of year 1 work will be. It will be looking at those exploratories and electives and making sure that the units and the curriculum and the content of those align directly to and can see those clear connections to the high school pathways. So while we have family and consumer science, and we have for many years, we also have full kitchens in those buildings. And how can the content of that class clearly align as a precursor to culinary arts or hospitality? We also, in Family and Consumer Science, do a child development unit. Is that, and looking at how can that be a precursor to our pre-education courses for our students who choose that pathway, or our health and human services courses for our students at the high school as well. So really giving them that chance to learn some of that content and explore that straightforwardly as they are and see those connections to their high school pathways. We are looking at Project Lead the Way and looking at how we can bring in our pre-engineering units that connect directly to the pathways. So exploring how our green architecture and energy and clean energy unit really connect directly to some of our construction and some of our science courses at the high school. Also looking at our Project Lead the Way is, can we create a precursor to flight and aerospace, which is one of the new pathways that we are looking at the high school. And really just looking at the art, the drama, and really trying to focus here over the next few years on our world language opportunities for students at the middle school. We're also looking at how do we provide really solid connected intervention and enrichment. So the win times will be embedded into the language, arts, and math block. Core instruction for the same amount of time they receive now, and then having that other half of the time for intervention and enrichment. This allows us to do both push in and pull out methods. When we have students who are significantly below grade level in reading, we can pull them out to a very structured intervention like Read 180. But when we have students who might be struggling with a specific area or a specific piece in language arts or in math, then we can push in with an interventionist into that group, and that allows those groups to be flexible and changing depending on the content. We have also be able to use that time for academic interventions through Avid, as well as interventions through EL as well. So that allows the EL teacher to be able to push in and do direct service for those level 3 and 4 students. So, and then looking at our enrichment happening not only in our honors courses, but it can also take place during this win time, and giving another opportunity for someone to push in and really work with that group of students who maybe are looking at advanced content. So, any questions? Okay. Another component that we're looking at is our social emotional learning and transitions. And I'm really just super excited to be able to say that we are going to implement next year a grade 6 elementary to middle school transition program for our students. This is the WEB program, or Where Everybody Belongs is what that stands for. And it's a program that utilizes student leaders. So our 8th graders become those leaders for the activities of orientation for all of our 6th grade students. And then also on the other side, as we have our outgoing 8th graders, they will also participate in a student-led orientation through Link Crew on their way to the high school. And so making sure that we've got those transitions covered. We know that school-to-school transitions are of a very high magnitude, and looking at how can we not only create leaders within our buildings, but also use those folks and their experience and their connections to younger students to assist those students in being oriented and more comfortable and take care of that transition for them in a lot of different ways. We also are looking at expanding our Avid community and relationship lessons and embedding those into our advisory time. 8th grade students will continue to use Naviance as a career and college exploration. And finally, college and career readiness. We will continue our Avid implementation. We do have Avid electives in each grade level, but we will also be looking at more push for Avid school-wide. And we're going to continue the work that was started this year, but also looking at targeting 6th grade as a school-wide Bridges program, in which the students don't necessarily have to be in the Avid elective, but now if they are in a team, with teachers supporting them, and with our WEB leaders, because WEB is not just for the transition of the first day. WEB leaders will continue to work with students throughout the year, and really looking at how can they support Avid strategies in their everyday classrooms. And so that is a very exciting step for us to go, and continues our implementation of school-wide Avid. So that I think will reach more students. We also are looking at doing career interest pieces through Naviance, as well as the connection to the high school planning tools within there. The timeline proposal, in year one, it looks like we got a lot of stuff to do. A lot of people are working hard, but to implement the schedule redesign, looking at rebuilding the Avid advisory. It used to be based on Ramp Up for Readiness. We feel as though Ramp Up for Readiness is better served in the advisory time for grade 9 students as a college preparatory planning tool. And the Avid relationship building lessons are better suited for our middle schools and to improving climate there. We're looking at making sure that our folks are very well versed in how to deliver interventions in the win time, and also looking at that curriculum work we're doing within our electives and our exploratories. Implementation of the transition and orientation programs, and looking at the social emotional learning implementation as well. Year 2, we'll take a look at our honors courses, what that content is, and how students are participating in those, continue to expand our restorative practices, and really looking at how project-based learning can support both the science implementation of standards and some of the entrepreneurship links that we'll be able to have within our electives. Finally, we'll be looking at that next generation of science standards and looking at that implementation with inquiry-based science, and I think the block schedule will allow students to do a lot more hands-on inquiry in those areas. So I don't have any other fancy graphics besides this one, but I do want you to know that there is a real sense of excitement among the staff and with the administration and about some of the changes and the benefits that will come forward because of these alignments to the high school.
Great. Thank you. Board members, I'll open it up for questions and comments. Director Schatz?
I'm with you. This, I can't wait. This, yeah, I'm super excited about this. And I really have been hearing a lot of really positive comments about this from members of the community, you know, just again, social media and different comments and things like that from people I've spoken to as well as online that this, yeah, there's absolutely a real sense of excitement among parents for this as well. So thank you for all the work that you're putting into this, and everyone else that's looking, that's putting the time and effort into this. It's going to be a game changer for the district for sure.
Yeah, and I feel as though we have used a lot of the family feedback that we got throughout all of our community meetings and really trying to address some of those concerns and in many cases wishes and hopes that people have had for their students' experience in middle school. I also want to make sure that you know that Franny Becker, our secondary curriculum coordinator, and Andy Gerke, our teacher on special assignment for secondary, have worked endlessly with our middle school principals to really put together a plan, and they are taking the forefront of this work. Unfortunately, Franny was not able to be with us this evening.
Any other questions? Director Currier?
Just to emphasize what Darcy said is this is what we need, a coordination, E12 that we now have, that we can tell our public about and that we have for our students. So thank you for your work and for the work of that your staff has put into this. So thank you.
Any other questions?
Just reiterate what they've already said, but I won't.
We're all completely with you. I did have a couple comments and questions. So to clarify, you've shared this before, but just so that we're all clear, this is all happening without any additional expense. We're just repurposing the funding, the existing funding that we have, improving the programming, but not adding any additional expense.
We are not adding additional expense. We're using the funds that we have, for example, for Project Lead the Way to redo units, shifting funding to make sure that we have the staff in place to meet these particular needs. But the idea is to move forward with the resources that we have.
Great. And a clarifying question about what's staying the same. We have a tradition of a fourth grade chess master in residence. I'm gathering that will continue. That's staying the same.
It would be terrible if that wasn't true. I really want to be able to make sure that we are using some of our funding that we have, especially our achievement integration funding to provide those extended learning and extended participation opportunities, and what those might be to make sure that students still have many of those opportunities, and some that we may have lost, like a spelling bee or a geography bee or other things in which students can really dig in and compete in a way that allows them to share their talents.
And also have feeder programs, again, aligning to what's available at the high school, making sure that, I know there are any number of
Yes.
additional enrichment opportunities that could be added. So we'll stay tuned on the test residency, because I know it's important district-wide. Just wondering about, with focusing on coding in the elementary school, I imagine down the road or soon, we'll have to also look at what we're doing with the high schoolers in terms of coding, because the elementary students will arrive far more advanced than those that have been.
We have that problem now.
Good.
And it's a good problem to have, in which our middle school digital courses are really, the specialists are looking at how do we increase the rigor for that, because now we have students who are arriving at middle school no longer at the basic levels of coding. They are really building projects, and so that's part of that alignment piece. And at the high school, we are looking at the opportunities for app development, and right now it's really limited to students who have that high level of coding, and we believe that by providing that foundation, it will be something that people will be able to, or students will be able to have more of them access to that, because they have those basic skills.
Great. Awesome. I have many more, but I'll save them for later, so thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Next, we will turn to committee reports, starting with Policy Review Committee, Director Chester.
Yes, we met on Tuesday, just 2 days ago, and are starting to review several policies that are up for just our annual regular review, and will be coming forward in future board meetings.
Great. Thank you. Negotiations Committee, Director Schatz.
Since the last board meeting, there's been a mediation session, and there's another one scheduled for March 5th.
March 5th. Great. Thank you. Legislative Committee, Director Hallweger is not here. And Student Performance and Achievement Committee, update on the Committee of the Whole. Dr. Battle and I are working, and Director Miller are working on pulling together a couple more Committee of the Whole conversations on particular topics, probably parsing them out every other month or so. So stay tuned for that. Are there any reports or updates on other board appointments or school assignments? Director Courier.
Yes. The AMSD, the Association of Metropolitan School Districts, February meeting was held February 7th. It was called the Legislative Session Preview. Many of the legislators from the metropolitan area were in attendance. The morning went like this. There were an AMSD presentation by Scott Kronquist, AMSD Executive Director, Superintendent Mary Krieger, Rosemont Apple Valley Egan, Superintendent Aston Osai, St. Louis Park, and Superintendent Sandy Lewandowski, Intermediate District 287. This was followed by comments by Commissioner Mary Catherine Wicker. Then there was a 30-minute legislative panel composed of Representative Cheryl Joachim, Representative Sandra Erickson, Senator Carla Nelson, and Senator Chuck Uygur. The morning concluded with a question-answer session. The AMSD has its legislative positions on its website if you're interested in following those. I also have an Intermediate District 917 report. The regular meeting of Intermediate District 917 was held on Tuesday, February 4th. The major business items included legislative update by Valerie Doslin, lobbyist for the intermediate districts, approval of the revised budget, review and first readings of the following policies: employee assistance program, student medication, unpaid meal charges, uniform grant guidance policy regarding federal revenue sources, public data requests, approval of maintenance payments to member districts, approval of resolution directing administration to make reductions in programs if enrollment fluctuations go down, and also an improvement of an overnight camping trip, an approval of contracts for assistant directors, principals, technology coordinators, and directors for the 2019 and through 21 that contract. We'll be meeting on March 3rd. However, the start time will be at 4 p.m. due to Election Day. And I also have a Hall of Fame report.
Can I ask you one question about,
Yes.
from the 917 report? So it sounds like there were some positions that were added, correct? The directors?
Not at that
yet.
meeting.
Not yet, okay.
No.
So but the board, the 917 board is moving into budget discussions.
Some budget discussions.
Some budget
That-
discussions.
Yeah, there was a workshop in January regarding that.
Is there any preliminary glimpse that you might be able to give us in terms of our expenses as a 917 partner?
I can pull that in.
That
And
would be
what
helpful,
What would
yeah.
probably be better is to have the superintendent come and maybe come to one of our, a
We can
workshop.
figure that out, yeah.
And explain it.
Mm-hmm.
Explain our role and responsibility, I think would be a better option for us.
Okay.
I think, because we have many new school board members who maybe don't understand our role and responsibility with that.
Yeah, and it just, knowing that we're going into our own budget discussion, we for sure need to understand implications from 917.
Yes.
So, Dr. Battle, you and I can work on that with Director Miller.
Yeah. And let me know if I can facilitate that.
Absolutely, yep.
And then the Hall of Fame. The 2020 Hall of Fame nomination form is up on the BHS website. You can find it by searching the Hall of Fame in the search box. Nominations are open until March 15th. Just a couple of reminders. If you are nominating a graduate, it must be someone who graduated 10 or more years ago. If you are nominating a BHS staff member, they must have been employed for 10 years and have been gone, retired, or have left BHS for 5 years. And don't forget the community member organization category. We have an extraordinary school community geographically, Burnsville, Egan, Savage. So get in those nominations. And that concludes my reports.
Thank you very much. Are there any other reports on board assignments? All right. Moving on to the consent agenda. Although board action is required, it is generally unnecessary to hold discussion on these items. In the event a board member wishes to discuss an item, that item will be moved for separate consideration. Is there anything that board members would like to move for separation? Hearing none, I will take a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Director Miller. Second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Hume. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. And the motion carries. New business, we will invite Amina Aftadal back to the speakers table. We are being asked to accept the American Indian Parent Advisory Committee resolution. Welcome back.
Thank you very much, Cheryl, Superintendent Battle, board members. I would recommend that you accept the concurrent status from the American Indian Education Family Advisory Committee. They, as I said before, they did vote unanimously to identify their status as concurrent with our current programming.
Okay. So I'll read the actual recommendation. Pursuant to Minnesota Statute Section 124D.78 Subdivision 2, it is recommended that the ISD 191 School Board accept the American Indian Parent Advisory Group vote of concurrence. I will take a motion. Moved by Director Schatz. Second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Hume. Questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the resolution, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay, and the motion carries. Staying with Amina, we are being asked to approve FY21 Achievement and Integration Revenue Budget.
As I shared with you, the budget does meet the MDE requirements in terms of distribution, and it is aligned and supported by all of the strategies within the plan. Once you have approved the budget, I will submit it to MDE, and we will make adjustments based on any of their feedback.
Great, thank you. And the recommendation is that the Board of Education approve the proposed FY21 Achievement and Integration Revenue Budget. I will take a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Director Courier, second? Second. Seconded by Director Miller. Questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the recommendation, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay, and the motion carries. Thank you. Next, I would like to invite Stacy Sovine, Executive Director of Human Resources, to the speakers table. We are being asked to approve the proposed revisions and readopt the unchanged language in the 2019-2021 collective bargaining agreement with SEIU Local Number 284 custodial employees. Welcome, Stacy.
Good evening, Chair Alt, Dr. Battle, board members. We have 12 bargaining units in the district. All of their contracts expired on June 30th, 2019. With the bringing of the custodial contract to you tonight, we are 2/3 of the way done. So that is, we're making progress. One unit we're still meeting with, and the other 3 have yet to bring me some dates in which they'd like to start. So we haven't even started yet with 3 of our groups. We will shortly. Started with the custodians negotiating back in July, and the unit represents 81 employees. We came to a tentative agreement on January 15th, and they voted earlier this month to approve it, ratify on their end. Primary language items include the elimination of fair share language with the Janus law, or the Janus court ruling from the Supreme Court. Also, we made significant changes to the emergency closing language. One of the problems we were running into whenever we closed school, the language kind of created an opportunity to where most of our custodial staff didn't report. Therefore, we couldn't open any of our buildings for any of the other activities that may either still occur, or clean sidewalks, or take care of boilers, or do anything. So we readjusted our language to have our essential personnel here to make sure that our buildings are safe and maintained during the worst of the weather conditions. Okay. Also, we modified our long-term disability language to allow for the exploration of a more mutually beneficial plan. Again, I talked about this to where we look, trying to eliminate the language within all the contracts that identify specifically a 30-day qualifying period. That is really not normal in the business, either 60 or 90-day qualifying periods. To do that, we put in an MOU that said if we do change our current plan design, we would also implement a short-term disability plan, which actually kicks in after 14 days. So it's very beneficial for the employee. It also allows the district to be efficient and look for other ways of providing income protection for our employees at the best possible rates. So far, all the different units that I brought to you with approvals have all adopted new language to move towards the LTD. It just makes sense at the end of the day. So the economic package is a 2-year increase cost of $373,000. The salary schedule increase on both years was 1 and 1. And the MSBA 2-year package is a 5.46% increase overall. And this proposal economically does fit within the board parameters.
Great, thank you very much. Having already read the recommendation, I will take a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Director Schatz, second.
Second.
Seconded by Director Chester. Questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving this recommendation, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay, and the motion carries. Thank you, Stacy. Next, we will turn to Dr. Battle. We are being asked to approve establishing K-8 pathway schools.
Thank you, Chair Alt and members of the board. Tonight, I bring a recommendation that the Board of Education approve establishing pathway schools at all District 191 elementary and middle school sites. The ISD 191 Board has shared their commitment to providing equitable access to rigorous programming to all students. The K-8 pathway schools will ensure that students will be able to participate in programs for advanced learners, STEM, literacy, visual and performing arts, social emotional learning, college and career readiness, and will replace the currently existing magnet schools. In the spring of 2019, the district reviewed the 3 magnet school sites established in 2008 and 2010. The conclusion of review was that the current sites were not meeting the original objectives aligned to the Minnesota Achievement and Integration Plan, nor did they result in a significant increase in enrollment in sites with available capacity. In the years since the establishment of the magnet sites, budget reductions have eliminated support of the unique learning opportunities at each site. The adoption of common schedules, including a required win time and specialist schedule, along with the adoption of district-wide core curriculum, created an even greater alignment amongst the buildings. With the facilities realignment comes the opportunity to bring the support for advanced learners, STEM, and other rigorous curriculum in literacy and math to all buildings within the 3-year implementation of the K-8 pathway schools, aligned with the high school pathways program, thus creating full access to a unified K-12 matriculation for each and every student at all sites. With this change and the discontinuation of magnet schools in District 191, transportation will no longer be provided to students who attend schools other than their assigned schools. Under the Pathway Schools model, students will no longer require transportation to access programming at a site other than their assigned school, since all programs will be available at every site.
Thank you, Dr. Battle. I will take a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Director Hume, second.
Second.
Seconded by Director Chester. Questions or comments? Just one that I know in the report section, we were all very favorably supportive of this, and it's really about making each school a great school and making sure that we are delivering on our promise to have equitable access to learning and opportunity for each and every single one of our students, regardless of what neighborhood they might live in. So thank you very much. I know a lot of work has gone into pulling this together. With that, those in favor of approving the recommendation, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay, and the motion carries. Before we adjourn, I just want to call out that we will be adjourning to a workshop on repurposing open schools with Stephanie White presenting. After that, we will adjourn to a closed session as permitted by Minnesota Statute 13D.03 to discuss ISD 191's labor negotiation strategy. I will take a motion to adjourn. Moved by Director Schatz, second.
Second.
Seconded by Director Hume. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And we will adjourn for 5 minutes to allow Stephanie to prepare.